Deciding which credit card or loan is right for you is like trying to choose where you want to eat for dinner. Except when you finally get to the restaurant, the menu's riddled with jargon that no average foodie could understand. So at Credit Karma, we keep things simple. We show you personalized recommendations that align with your money goals and help you turn the confusing fine print into terms you can actually understand. And as a cherry on top, we provide a detailed overview for a new card or loan before you apply. That way, we can help you make decisions faster and with more confidence. Download Intuit Credit Karma today to get started.
Whether you're ordering wings for the game, whipping up a 7-layer dip, or ordering pizza, there's something about football that makes you want to eat. And this football season, Uber Eats has the best deals on game day food. No matter what you're craving, from 2-for-1 pizza to buy one, get one wings, Uber Eats will be dropping new deals each week, all season long. Uber Eats, official on-demand delivery partner of the NFL. Order now. Terms and conditions apply. See app for details.
Welcome into 49ers Access. My name is Sterling Bennett, and today we are previewing the San Francisco 49ers Sunday night football matchup against the hated Dallas Cowboys. And after tonight's Thursday night football game between the Rams and the Vikings, this game has kind of been recontextualized for the San Francisco 49ers coming into this one. San Francisco is 3-4, coming off a pretty bad loss to the Kansas City Chiefs, while the Cowboys are 3-3, coming off their bye week, and they are undefeated on the road this year, beating the Steelers and the Giants. But after the Rams and Vikings game tonight, the Niners are now in last place in the NFC West. I don't think anybody could have predicted that would be where San Francisco would be going into week number 8 of the 2024 NFL season. But here we are. The Niners are indeed tied for last place in the NFC West, again 3-4. So while the division's very close, right, one game separates them from first place, it goes to show you that the Rams are getting healthy. Cooper Kupp came back. Puka Nakua's now back. Of course, they have Matthew Stafford and whatnot, but because the hole they dug themselves into still exists, it's just ugly right now for the San Francisco 49ers. And it feels like this game is becoming more important every time you look at it. As every day that passes and that clock continues to tick, the San Francisco 49ers have to win this game now more so than ever. They could leave week 8 going into the bye week, last place in the NFC West. Again, just terrible. So you have to win this game. You win this game, the Seahawks lose, the Cardinals lose, the Niners are in first place. It goes to show you how close things really are in the NFC West. And between these two teams, San Francisco and the Dallas Cowboys, it's kind of a war of attrition so far, right? Both these teams are in eerily similar situations, fighting for survival in the NFC and in their own respective divisions. Again, the Niners are now in last place. The Rams are ahead of them. The Cardinals are ahead of them. Both those teams beat San Francisco. Meanwhile, San Francisco beat the Seahawks, who are in first place. For the Cowboys, they're behind the Commanders, and they are near the Giants, and they're right where the Eagles kind of are, one game separating those two teams. So both these teams were supposed to be the top dogs or one of the top dogs in their own division, now find themselves in third or in last place, not where you want to be. This is, again, a war of attrition for both these rosters. The Niners will not have Jauan Jennings. He has the back injury. He's not going to play Sunday. Talanoa Hufanga, he's on injured reserve. He's not going to play in this one, but according to Mike Silver and Hufanga's agent, there is a chance for Hufanga to come back in the next few weeks via wearing a massive club on his or a brace on his wrist. So there may be an opportunity for Hufanga to come back in the near future, but that's always up in the air. Of course, Brandon Aiyuk's not going to play, tore the ACL, tore the MCL. He's out for the rest of the year. Javon Hargrave's out for the rest of the year. Dre Greenlaw's still out, dating back to last year in the Super Bowl. And of course, Christian McCaffrey hasn't played a single snap this season. For the Cowboys, they're not going to have DeMarcus Lawrence. their star defensive pass rusher. Not going to have Brandon Cooks, their number 2 receiver. Deron Bland, their number 2 cornerback. He's not going to play. Marshawn Nealand, their draft pick this year. He's not going to play. Sam Williams, I believe from South Alabama, an edge rusher a couple years ago. He's not going to play. And they likely aren't going to have Micah Parsons. So it feels like that when you look at both these two teams, their star-studded rosters have been completely depleted. For the Cowboys and their offense, it's simply just Dak and CeeDee Lamb. For San Francisco, obviously, you still have Debo. He'll play in this one, hopefully. He's practiced all week. You have Brock Purdy still. You got Jordan Mason. You got Pearsall. You got Cowing. You got George Kittle, obviously. But for the Cowboys defense, they're not going to have their number 1, their number 2, their number 3, and maybe their number 4 edge rusher in this game. So, all that said, it really is going to be whose number 2 and 3rd stringers can push them to victory in this one, or whose current star is still playing can be the reason they win this one and etch out a victory on Sunday Night Football. Niners Throwback says here on the YouTube comments, Demo and Bernardo Green are going to lock up CeeDee Lamb. I certainly hope so. Going to have to. That said, we'll dive into the offense and defense for San Francisco against the Dallas Cowboys offense and defense going forward. But do want to ask you kindly to like, share, and subscribe to the show. It is the easiest, freest, cheapest way to help the show out. You can also give us a 5-star review on the audio podcasting platforms. But again, the Dallas Cowboys are hoping to go into or come out of their bye week refreshed, ready to go, and get back on track against San Francisco. Meanwhile, San Francisco is trying to get back on track themselves and go into their bye week feeling pretty good, maybe even in first place. So kind of a tale of very similar cities, if you will, in the Dallas Cowboys and San Francisco 49ers. So let's break down the Niners Week 8 Sunday Night Football primetime matchup against the Dallas Cowboys, and let's start with the Niners offense. And I think the Niners offense has been arguably, besides special teams, one of their most frustrating units to watch because the potential's still there. The weaponry's still on the field for the most part. I get it. Now no Aiyuk. You had that Debo for a couple games. Now CMC hasn't played at all. But you've had some of those guys, sometimes even together, and the offense has kind of sputtered its way through 7 weeks so far. You can argue that had the offensive red zone efficiency been a little better, this team could be 5-2 currently and looking pretty good in the NFC West, where everyone else is kind of mediocre. San Francisco finds themselves smack dab in the middle of that mediocrity, which with the roster they have and the offense they have is a massive letdown for who they should have been coming into the year. I will say this, the defenses are attacking the Shanahan-style offense a lot differently this year, especially in San Francisco. You see the Chiefs, the Vikings, and others attacking San Francisco's offensive line in different ways, using blitzes. They're also forcing the Niners receivers, which already usually aren't great separators, minus a fully healthy, fully integrated Brandon Aiyuk. They're forcing those guys to beat man coverage, which they usually can't. Then, of course, because of those two things, they're disrupting Brock Purdy's timing. So it's kind of a new, I don't want to say innovative because it's football, right? It's not that special, but what it is, it's different. It's new for what San Francisco's offense is facing this year, and it has created so many problems for their offense when Debo can't separate, Kittle can't separate, then oh my goodness, Purdy has 5 guys, coming at him. He has, someone misses their block, and then it's a sack, it's a pressure. It creates problems for San Francisco's offensive line. But we've seen a lot of people that on Twitter or on the internet, wherever you frequent yourself on social media, a lot of people are hating on Kyle Shanahan. And I get that. There's definitely frustration on my behalf towards him at times. Play calling, time management, just situational football always seems to be a massive question mark for him, which predates this year, obviously. But a lot of people are on the hashtag fire Kyle Shanahan bandwagon. I still think that's asinine. This team was in the Super Bowl, and had they held on or scored 3 more points in regulation, the fire Kyle Shanahan trope is done forever. It really is done. But here we are, 2024 and people still want Shanahan fired, I would push back on that and say that more so than ever, the San Francisco 49ers need Kyle Shanahan to help get them back on track. Now, that means Shanahan has to learn from what's not working, almost self-scout during the week, which is hard. But that said, thankfully, the Niners are facing an opponent that, kind of like the Seattle Seahawks, their matchup definitely favors San Francisco's offense in this one. But there was one troubling stat I saw this week, and it kind of sums up how this year has gone for San Francisco, whether it is due to CMC being out, due to Aiyuk not being there during the offseason program and holding in for a new contract, or Debo being on and off the field. The 49ers so far in 2024 have generated one explosive play on a target behind the line of scrimmage. From 2018 to 2023, essentially Jimmy Garoppolo's supposed to be his first full year as a starter, right? All the way until last year. So from Jimmy G and Kittle together, to Jimmy G and Debo together, to Jimmy G and Debo and Kittle and Aiyuk, all the way to Jimmy G, Purdy, CMC, it encompasses all the good Niner football. They had 70, which is the third most in football during that time. And that's troublesome. You can tell that San Francisco, it doesn't have the playmaking they once had, whether it's guys slowing down, guys being injured. It just feels like San Francisco's offense has gone from line of scrimmage, in the box style of offense over the middle to everything is deep, everything is drop 7. And it's like it's become a pass heavy, but passing downfield heavy offense compared to maybe a play action run first offense, which I get it. Quarterback styles, Purdy, Jimmy G, somewhat comparable, but Purdy has a much more high propensity to test the ball downfield, throw deep and test defensive backs and man coverage and whatnot down the field. But it's troublesome to know that this year alone, it's not like, oh, they only have 5. They only have 1. That is like, what are we doing? The offense has changed. They're playing indifferently. You can tell that you can tell the opposing defenses are stacking the boxes to take away the run. Again, then forcing San Francisco's wide receivers to play man coverage, and they just can't beat them. You find oftentimes the reason why Brock Purdy's tight window throw percentage is so high is because it's not because he wants to do that. He has to do that because no one's getting open. And I'm hoping that knowing this stat, which means nothing to Kyle Shanahan, but I'm hoping that with the desperation these guys are playing for on Sunday, now being in last place in the NFC West, this, I think, is a place where Debo and Jacob Cowing can come into play and hopefully bring some life to San Francisco's rather stagnant offense. It's not really explosive. The run game is still good, but it's just the way they're playing is not sustainable. It's not really working to win football games. Sometimes it does. They've won 3 games thus far. You beat the Jets, the Patriots, and the Seattle Seahawks. Doesn't do much for me. You should have beat the Rams and the Cardinals. You had the Patriots for most of that game. Well, I won't say that, but you were close in most of that game. But I'm hoping that the way Cowing and Debo can play, we will see Shanahan revert back to, not completely to what it was during Jimmy G, but getting the ball into his playmakers' hands behind the line of scrimmage, allowing them to be the people you drafted them to be. Debo being the yak guy, being the yak king, if you will, one of the yak bros, and Cowing, who we saw last week, took a screen for 9 yards. Again, it's 9 yards. It isn't 35 or whatever, but you can see that there is speed and playmaking ability on display. It's why you drafted him. I'm hoping that Shanahan leans into the reason as to why you drafted guys, which brings me to the next point of this game of the San Francisco 49ers are going to be relying on young receivers to fill voids. As Larry Matthews says, that Brocktober has not gone to plan. No, it has not gone to plan whatsoever, but let's hope that they can salvage Brocktober and get us into November feeling pretty good. Maybe you get CMC back and Dre Greenlaw back in the next month or so, and you can get healthy again. But you're right, Lori, Brocktober has not gone to plan whatsoever, and that kind of leads into Brandon Aiyuk's done for the year. Jauan Jennings isn't going to play in this game. can the San Francisco 49ers trust Ricky Pearsall and Jacob Cowing to carry a heavy load? Now, unfortunately, for as much as San Francisco needs Kyle Shanahan, sometimes Kyle Shanahan can be one of the most frustrating coaches to watch because we're sitting there on our couches at the stadium, whether you're watching it on TV, at a bar, with your friends, whatever. You can see that when you see, oh, there's Ronnie Bell, there's Chris Conley, you're just like, what? Why? Why are we doing this to ourselves? Does Shanahan like punishment? What makes him feel like this is the best route to take when insanity would tell you doing the same thing over and over again? Well, that's not going to work for you because the result's always the same. Now, it's lesser so with Chris Conley than Ronnie Bell, but I'm begging Kyle Shanahan to almost lean into the youth movement of this team. To go with the Warriors, for example, Warrior fans have been clamoring to see Moses Moody and Jonathan Kuminga, and in previous years, James Wiseman and others on the Golden State Warriors. Now, there's more nuance to that conversation for sure, but I think that same thing applies to Kyle Shanahan. This fan base wanted the right tackle in that first round, wanted the cornerback in that first round. Some people wanted an edge rusher in that first round. You didn't go that way. You went with a receiver. Well, it's funny enough that all that bickering and moaning of Ricky Pearsall in the first round, now it's like, thank God you have a first round talented receiver in place. Now, will he play up to par? Time will tell, but I'm hoping that Shanahan can. And this is the biggest thing with Kyle, is that he is really a very smart person. There's a reason why so many teams try to copy and mimic what he does offensively, but it does feel like that the league, I don't want to say has caught up to him, but they have certainly caught on to him, right? And that means you have to pivot. Now, I think one thing Kyle Shanahan can learn from Mike McDaniel is getting his guys free releases. Now, Shanahan is usually pretty good at this, but when you have young wide receivers, that in Pearsall's case is known to be a separator, but it's game number 2 after being shot less than 60 days ago. The expectations shouldn't be too high, but he didn't play too bad against the Chiefs. I think played pretty good towards the end of that game as he got more comfortable, but I'm hoping Shanahan can get his guys free releases and design those for them. Don't let them just go out there and say beat man coverage. No, Kyle, set them up for success. Now, Brock has to hit them, obviously. They have to do their job, but there is a way Kyle can scheme open his receivers because, when you have young guys on your team, the expectation shouldn't be from day one they're going to be great, right? Most guys aren't Jamar Chase or Brian Thomas this year for the Jacksonville Jaguars, or, dare I say, Justin Jefferson, Puka Nacua. Those are rarities, right? And for Shanahan's case, the team is pointing towards you hey, you are the one that can design this perfect game plan to free these guys up. I want to see screen passes and end arounds, but also I want to see, put Pearsall in motion, get him kind of moving early on the line, then boom, he's got a free release somewhere. There are things Shanahan can do. You can mismatch, put guys in motions for sure, do pick plays obviously, but both these guys, Pearsall and Cowing, have the skill set to pick up the slack. And I always point to this, that when we were talking about Brandon Aiyuk this year, and I did the whole podcast talking about, replacements for Brandon Aiyuk via the trade market, Brandon Aiyuk was not who he was last year or previous years. You're not asking your rookies to replace an all-pro. You're asking, hey, can you get me over 30 catches this year? Give me over 400 yards. If they do that, they'll surpass Brandon Aiyuk's 2024. I think more importantly, what San Francisco is going to miss offensively, at least that receiver, is that physicality. Now, maybe that's where Chris Conley comes into play, but he's not a big guy. Now that Jauan Jennings isn't going to be out there, I think that's where San Francisco will miss. They'll miss Jennings, I think, more than Brandon Aiyuk, to be honest with you, because you have no idea, and which kind of goes back to my first point of, will Ronnie Bell play more than Cowing or Pearsall? Because, well, he blocks. He blocks better, which, if you're Kyle and you see that the Dallas Cowboys have the worst rushing defense in football, we could see a lot of Ronnie Bell in this game, and it might be for the better in regards to run blocking, but my goodness, as a receiver, you never want to give away a tell of, hey, we're running here or we're passing here, but my goodness, I mean, Ronnie Bell's hands have been like Brewski in longest yard. Shouldn't have had that popcorn. He's been terrible as a receiver. So I'm kind of interested to see, begging almost, if you will, for Kyle to utilize his youth because they can give you explosiveness. They have 4.3 speed. Cowing's a burner for sure. And I think, to keep the Dallas Cowboys honest, people forget there are two teams playing football sometimes, and that includes me. You're going through paper, looking at stats, and, how can you beat this team in this way and that and the other? And you're like, well, why didn't it work out? And you're like, well, the other team plays football too. So with that said, the Dallas Cowboys are sitting back like, man, they ain't got Jennings. Aiyuk's now gone for the year. I mean, Debo had pneumonia-like symptoms. Like, he's just out of the hospital a couple days ago. Like, man, Trevon Diggs and Malik Hooker and Jordan Lewis, they are licking their chops, hoping to jam these guys at the line, play some man coverage. They really are looking forward to playing San Francisco because they had the bye week. They can prep for these guys.
With Uber Reserve, good things come to those who plan ahead. Family vacay? Reserve your ride as soon as you book your flights. To all the planners, now you can reserve your Uber ride up to 90 days in advance. See Uber app for details.
And they're rookies. That's why young players have to rely on Kyle to almost not do their job for him, but it's hey, be the coach. Be that genius you once were. The great thing about this, though, is, which I think is will be a main factor in this game, is both teams' pass rush. And for San Francisco's offense, the Dallas Cowboys, again, aren't going to have what seems like DeMarcus Lawrence, Micah Parsons, may or may not play game time decision, but didn't practice today. So kind of feels like he's not going to play in this one. Then you have guys like Sam Williams and others, and it's you're not going to have your top four edge rushers. That should be a relatively fun day for Brock Purdy, which the offensive line wasn't terrible against Kansas City. It's just it seems like the worst situation, they tend to, play poorly, right? Goal line situations and whatnot, third downs, 3rd and 4, and then boom, McKivitz gets blown up by Karlaftis and interceptions and sacks and whatnot. But the Cowboys do not have a good defense this year. It's one of the worst in football. And I think when we're talking about San Francisco kind of bouncing back, getting back to who they once were, or reinventing themselves through, the halfway point of the NFL season, essentially, for them, I think a lot of this gets back to running the football. Kansas City, we walked into that game knowing that the Niners were not going to be able to run the football against them, and they really didn't until late in the game, only a handful of times. But for the most part, Kansas City's defense just stuffed the run consistently. That shouldn't be the case for the Dallas Cowboys. I know I talked about, I think after the Cardinals game, that, well, paper doesn't matter. Stats don't matter. This team defies all the logic and stats that they're out there, which is true. But when you see a Dallas defense this bad, it almost makes you wonder, oh my goodness. If they cannot run against this run defense, they're it blows my mind as to what, it'll make me question everything. Because the Dallas Cowboys run defense, just stat-wise, and I'm going to read you a lot of stats here, but I'll simplify the whole thing for you. This year alone, the Dallas Cowboys rank 32nd in EPA, expected points allowed per play. Dead last. They rank 30th in success rate allowed. They are 29th against the run per DVOA, and the adjusted line yards allowed, they are 30th. Stick with me here. I promise it'll make sense. The 2024 Dallas Cowboys rank 798. So there's 798 teams that have played football since the year 2000 to 2024. Okay? The Dallas Cowboys rank 798th, right? 798th EPA per rush. One of the worst teams in football. They rank 790th in defensive rushing success allowed. They rank 786th of rushes per touchdown allowed, and they rank 798th in opponents' percentage of rushes for first downs. To simplify this for you, they're dog shit. They're terrible. They are one of the worst run defenses of all time since the year 2000. And if there is a head coach that says, you know what, we want to run the rock, ground and pound, get back to our identity, well, what better opponent to do that against than one of, if not the worst, run defending teams in the NFL since the year 2000. And to make this more simple for you, teams are averaging 31.5 attempts on the ground per game. They're averaging, with those 31.5 attempts, 4.5 yards an attempt. Do some quick math. That's 143.2 rushing yards per game allowed by the Dallas Cowboys this season, and almost 2 rushing touchdowns allowed per game. Jordan Mason and Isaac Guerrero, whoever's back there for San Francisco this week, should have themselves a field day. You talk about bouncing back, getting right, finding your identity once again. You want to run the rock? You're facing the right team to just run through. Now, the Dallas Cowboys have been a team that, even when they're fully healthy with Parsons and Lawrence and others involved, they've never been a great run defense, but with those guys out, they have cratered to, again, one of the worst run defenses in football since the year 2000. We're not talking, they're the 20th worst. No, they're like the second worst run defense of all time since the year 2000. And you add more into this, Jordan Mason, who Kyle Shanahan's going to be doing wide zone, inside zone stuff, following Dominic Pooney, pulling guards out, following Trent Williams, who, hasn't been great this year, but still Trent, right? Jordan Mason so far this year, who has been phenomenal for San Francisco, 53 forced tackles missed. He has forced 53 missed tackles this year, the most in the entire NFL. The Dallas Cowboys have a missed tackle percentage of 15.8. That's the worst in football. So when you combine terrible run defense and bad tackling, what does that signify to you? That to me signifies one of two things. The first thing is run the rock, pound the rock, run it down their throats consistently. They're not going to be able to stop you. And if they do stop you, give them kudos, then crush them with play action afterwards. Make them stop you. One of the worst things Kyle Shanahan does, whether it's regular season or in the Super Bowl, he allows the opposing team to dictate what he does, right? Well, based on this look, you can be averaging 7 yards a carry, 6 yards a pop. Make the other team stop you. Spagnuolo is great at doing this. He'll give Shanahan the look he wants to pass the football because he wants Shanahan to call passing plays, whether it's to stop the clock or forcing completions or get turnovers, because he knows his defensive line and his blitz packaging can get home and cause havoc on the quarterback. You almost want Kyle to be himself. Be as stubborn as you possibly can be, Kyle, and run the rock as long as you can and make the Dallas Cowboys stop you. That's what I want from Kyle Shanahan in this game. That said, when the Dallas Cowboys do stop you or they stack the box further, hello, hola, ¿cómo estás? That's when you hit them with the play action. Boom, play action, Kittle's downfield, deep crosser, get a little post route. See some Kyle Juszczyk stuff. I'm waiting for that Kyle Juszczyk seam pass on play action to actually work once. We tried it against the Eagles in 2020. I think they tried it last year and they hit it, but it wasn't. He got tackled. He didn't run very far afterwards, I believe. But I'm waiting for that play to finally hit. I have a weird feeling Shanahan's like, I'm going to call this Sunday night. It's going to be awesome. And it's prime time Dallas Cowboys. It's like you really got to pick yourself up. I want to see George Kittle out there with the F Dallas t-shirt on touchdowns. And I really do think that, this can be. We've seen this year that despite Debo missing time and Aiyuk missing time, or not missing all the time, but Jennings missing a game against Kansas City, and of course, CMC being out, George Kittle has stepped it up big time now. Kittle ain't perfect. He's not going to be this route runner, but he's a great blocker, great in the red zone. And he has been this team's most reliable weapon thus far this year. Obviously, against Seattle, he had 2 touchdowns, which were awesome to see. I can see that this being another Kittle game. If the run's working, there is one player that can help you get open via play action. That's George Kittle. He's just kind of one of these ultimate mismatches for a defense. Now, it'll be interesting to see how the Dallas Cowboys scheme for him. Do they want Michael Kendricks to be on him, which, funny enough, kind of burned San Francisco during the offseason? He signed here, then didn't sign here, went to Dallas, and that gave us Devondre Campbell. So if you want to know why the season went to hell, it's Michael Kendricks' fault with the Dallas Cowboys. They can get their revenge this Sunday at prime time against them. But I would assume if I was Dallas, I'd want a safety on George Kittle, but that's just me. Mike Zimmer's defense is known to be very linebacker reliant with Michael Kendricks in pass coverage against tight ends. That's why San Francisco signed, or at least thought they had signed Kendricks, because they wanted that pass coveraging linebacker opposite Fred Warner so they can blitz Fred at times and have a more reliable pass coveraging linebacker in today's football. Whereas Devondre Campbell, enough said. But that's why Kendricks is now there in Dallas to be their pass coveraging linebacker. But if you can't stop the run, you are leaving yourself open to getting gashed continually by play action. And so I'm hoping Kyle Shanahan's like, man, for as much as Dallas's defense and their secondaries like rookie cornerbacks or Pearsall and Cowling rookie receivers, man, can't wait to face those guys. It's like, I hope Shanahan's like, I cannot wait to face Dallas's defense. I think for a team that's 500, and for as fraudulent thus far as San Francisco has been, I could argue the Dallas Cowboys have been 10 times more fraudulent this year. They've been terrible on like every facet. Now, San Francisco does have a pretty good they have a good track record of playing down to their opponents so far this year, so time will tell. Sunday will be kind of one of these nail-biting, how's this game going to go? But I can see this game going multiple ways. I can see San Francisco crushing the Cowboys. I could not see Dallas crushing San Francisco. It's either going to be Niners just walking through them, or it'll be a very tight game, which feels like that's going to happen because it's happened 7 times this year, essentially. But I do think that this will be a big George Kittle game. He has a lot of mismatches for this team, but also play action is a good opportunity to get you free releases for your young receivers, some misdirection, and because you see that big 15.8 missed tackle percentage by the Dallas Cowboys, well, you want to talk about Deebo Samuel takeover, you want to talk about getting Cowling going on screen passes and end arounds. This is a good opportunity to see what these guys can do, to kind of get back to who you were in previous years for San Francisco. Unfortunately, this year, San Francisco has had multiple get-right games. They blew one against the Rams, blew one against the Cardinals, and then beat Seattle for that kind of third one. But their get-right games have not gotten them right. So all these stats could mean nothing come Sunday night, and we're like, well, whatever. What was that guy talking about? But I do think that missing Jennings and missing CMC and now missing Aiyuk, it's a really good opportunity for Shanahan to lean into Deebo once again like he did against Seattle, get that first touchdown, 76 yards, and also just kind of get back to a quick-paced, fast-paced offense, keep the defense on their heels. That is the one thing I've noticed thus far this year is that San Francisco the last couple years, mainly with a healthy offense, they have been able to run the rock really well, but also they kept defenses on the field for long times. They were exhausted, they were tired, and they just beat them down offensively, where when the offense left the field, it was like we saw a bloodbath. Like there was a war, and the other team didn't kill anybody. There is blood everywhere. And now it more so feels like that the Niners are kind of fighting tooth and nail. It's kind of it feels like a battle. They're shooting shots at you and vice versa, whereas in previous years it was like San Francisco is running through the opposition. I think this is a really good chance to, I don't want to say return to form, but it's a really good chance to see that visually once again by San Francisco, which if you're a team that is kind of vying for whether you're in first place or you're in last place, you don't want to be obviously in last place. This is a good chance for San Francisco to kind of get back to 500, get to the bye week, and hopefully against the Buccaneers after the trade deadline to get CMC back. And hopefully the offense starts to pick themselves up at that point in time, which week by week, let's not go too far ahead, but by that time, hopefully things pick themselves up. But the most important part of the offense isn't just running the football or play action or Purdy. Purdy was bad against the Chiefs. In fact, I think it was his worst game as a pro. That said, this is a really good chance to bounce back. The Cowboys likely aren't going to get pressure on you. I get you got young players. I do think Purdy has been forcing things a little bit too much, but how much is that is because he has to, because no one's separating, and because he's playing too much hero ball. Unfortunately, for Brock, I think sometimes that gunslinger comes out too much. Or we talked about, I think, maybe in the Rams game. Or no, it was the Cardinals game. Where I talked about that, Brock, yes, can be a gunslinger, but the gunslinger sometimes needs to be reeled in. And what I meant by that was I want Brock to play freely, yes, but also I realized that sometimes Brock can, I don't want to say play too fast, but it's almost like once you hit 2 or 3 plays, you feel like you can make every single play, which then he forces some throws here or there, which I don't mind him playing fearlessly, but it's like you got to make sure you know when to take your shots. I think this year for Brock, because things have been so tight late in games, guys have been in and off the field consistently for him. I think he's been forcing things a little too much for my liking. I more so want him to transition from a gunslinger into a sniper, where it's more precise. There is, let's take shots downfield, but know when to take them. I think Matthew Stafford's that way, which they beat the Vikings tonight. Vikings have lost 2 in a row. I think Matthew Stafford's that way. I think Matthew Stafford is not a gunslinger. I think he's a sniper. And I think Brock, although doesn't have that arm talent, I think can get there with the way he plays, where it's like, Brock, you're running around with your head cut off in the backfield making plays, which is great, but it's like, take a check down, throw the ball away. You can take your shots downfield. Against the Chiefs, you had 2 of them, but it's about knowing when to hit them and take them, and also being precise when you do it. Now, that's much easier said than done for Brock Purdy and most quarterbacks, but I kind of want him to, let's not force 10 throws, let's force 4 throws. And in those 4 throws, let's make sure you're geared up, ready to go, and you'll hit them at a higher percentage, which is kind of what he was last year for San Francisco. He was not forcing throws last year. He was running around, making plays, and being precise and smart with his throws. He was throwing the ball away last year a lot more than he is now. You can see kind of the pressure, the forcing on display a lot, but still having a great year. And I think in this one, because San Francisco should be able to run the football effectively, I think that plays more into the red zone issues they've been having. San Francisco's offense coming into this one ranks 27th in the red zone. The Dallas Cowboys defense ranks 31st in the red zone. So you have, 32, 31, like the 6th worst offense in the red zone in football against the 2nd worst defense in football. You have to wonder, what happens when a very stoppable offense goes up against a very movable defense. Who blinks first? I think San Francisco, if they can run the football in the red zone, should be able to put up a ton of points in this one. The one thing I hate saying, which it's when you pass the football on 3rd downs in the red zone, and when you pass the football in general in the red zone, it's harder, right? They know you're not going to throw behind them. You can't throw, 20 yards, 30 yards downfield. You have like 10 yards to work with. Everything's going to be in front of them. So the defenses can play the red zone a lot smarter. And in Brock's case, it's turned into a handful of interceptions at times. But also it's forced San Francisco into 3rd and 6, 3rd and 8. Where in this one, I could see San Francisco being in like 3rd and 2. And if that's the case, go for it twice. Quarterback sneak, 1st down, touchdown, boom, you're in the end zone, right? I think we'll see a lot of that in this one. I think if San Francisco's offensive line can win the trench warfare battle, I think we will see San Francisco really stomp the Dallas Cowboys. I know the Dallas Cowboys, think of it this way. if last week was San Francisco's best chance to beat the Chiefs and Mahomes, having the worst season he's had ever, didn't throw a touchdown. He's thrown 6 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, not having a great year stat-wise, right, in multiple categories. If that was San Francisco's best chance and they blew it, I can see Dallas saying like, oh, we can finally beat San Francisco. They're not having a great year. Then San Francisco being like, okay, we lost to the Chiefs, but there is still levels to this, and you're just not on our level just yet. And that so far is not even great this year. Being 500 or under 500 currently is not great for San Francisco, but the Dallas Cowboys still aren't good enough to beat them. I can see that certainly happening in this one, but I think for Brock in particular, running the football is going to help him immensely. 1, play action, we already talked about that, but 2, in the red zone, I think it allows him to kind of relax, not force things, but also for Kyle Shanahan too. I think one thing with Kyle we're seeing is that the offense, people talk about creativity, and I always ask, what do you mean by that? Because people say that because they watch Andy Reid, and I get it. You're watching Carson Wentz in the backfield, and you're like, what the heck's going on back here? You're watching flip passes, and you're watching all these different things that Shanahan's not doing, where it kind of feels like that Shanahan, I don't know if it's because of the personnel, whether it's CMC being out or Debo missing time and now Aiyuk gone and Jennings being gone for the Chiefs game. It's like, okay, but you were doing all the things that Andy Reid's doing, kind of, like the end arounds, the screens, the Debo Samuel passing plays to Jauan Jennings and against the Rams at SoFi, and like even last year you saw Christian McCaffrey, saw Jauan Jennings throw a touchdown pass to Christian McCaffrey in the Super Bowl, and it's like, where is stuff like that? Like, no one's saying do it every single play, but it's like the creativity for Kyle, like the offense has kind of grown so simple, and by simple I mean predictable. Like, I feel like I've seen every single play he'll call in every game thus far. I've seen him before. Like, week 1 looked no different than week 2. 2 to 3 and 3 to 4. It's like, I've seen this before. Now, there's obviously differences here and there. And I'm sure there's, I'm no head coach. I'm not going to say I am or, be this offensive guru. But it's like, if I feel bored watching your football games, I can guarantee the defense is like, we know it's coming. Like, we can feel it coming. And I think that is most identified in the red zone, mainly because they can't run the football and whatever, but it's like, you can feel this, okay, you run a post route, you want to out route, you run this kind of check down here, Brock's not even going to throw it to you, but just be there in case. And it's like, I feel like I've seen this story over and over. It's like watching the Friday the 13th series. As soon as you get to part 3, you kind of seen them all. And you're like, okay, I need something else here. And, how many times can Jason come back to life? Oh, he's got a new hockey mask this time, changing it up. It's like, okay, but it's the same movie, right? And I think for Kyle, it's like, how can you reinvent a scheme that's been mimicked so much? How can you, adjust an offense that has been one of the best in football, moving the football from the 30-yard line to the opposing team's 20-yard line, but can't score once you get inside the 20s. I think that's where things aren't clicking. I know Kyle won't tell you what's going on exactly. He's never going to tell the secrets, but it's like, this is a game where if you continue to struggle in the red zone and on the ground, like there's something, like it's a Kyle problem at that point. And unfortunately, in a game like this, people will point to, well, Debo's in the hospital and Jennings and Aiyuk and no CMC, but it's like you were successful without those guys. Like 2019, you had Debo as a rookie. And sure, the offense took on new strides once Emmanuel Sanders got traded for and whatnot, but you had Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson and Matt Breida, and you can run the football in the red zone with a worse offensive line. Like, what's going on? So I have a hard time believing that the issues are personnel related when the personnel was arguably worse and they were much more successful in 2021 and 2019. And really even before Christian McCaffrey got here in 2022. You had Elijah Mitchell and Jeff Wilson Jr., and they weren't great that year, but they were scoring in the red zone at least. And it's like, what's going on? So I'm hoping that Shanahan, yes, viewed this as a get in, get out, get a win, no one else get hurt for sure. But it's like, your season's on the line. The Rams won tonight. You're in last place. If you lose against the Cowboys and you're 3-5 in the bye week, you're going to start thinking about, how can we, move Travis Ward and Joshua Dobbs, and, would a team take on Ambry Thomas and, John Feliciano? And I don't think they would want to do those things, but it's like sometimes you're forced to. If a team will give you a third-round pick for Travis Ward or second-round pick, you'll say yes in a heartbeat if you're 3-5. Now, I hope they're 4-4. That's the goal, right? But I think for the Niners, you dug yourself into a hole. You have failed to execute over and over and over again. Now you have to find a way to dig yourself out of it. Now, it's tough. Your personnel is banged up. You're injured. You don't have your all-pro wide receiver in Brandon Aiyuk. You don't have Jauan Jennings having a career year. Debo is in the hospital, and all those excuses certainly exist, but this is the NFL. There are no excuses. Your quarterback's still healthy, who you're going to pay $60+ million to. Your head coach is still there, who's been one of the best, leading offensive callers in football since 2019. You have Trent Williams. You have a better offensive line besides center and right tackle, right? But you have Jordan Mason having a great year. Like, I know people want to point to this and be like, well, those guys are hurt, but it's like, no, there are no excuses. The entire league is banged up. Andy Reid had no problem scoring more points once Juju Smith-Schuster got hurt. The Dallas Cowboys, who are terrible, still beat the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Giants. The Giants beat the Seahawks. Like, the injuries simply do not matter in the NFL. It's about being outcoached. And I think that, well, yes, it helps to have, better personnel for sure. I think Shanahan has been outcoached for a large portion of the season, and a lot of that has been special teams. Now, unfortunately, in this one, San Francisco, with the 31st ranked special teams unit, are facing the number 1 special teams unit in football per DVOA with the Dallas Cowboys. That's a nightmare. Sound the sirens. DEFCON 5. Call the police. Call the emergency systems. Like, whatever you have to do. That is a horrifying thing to look at and face and go, oh my God. We're going to have like 9 punts blocked. At that point, go for it on 4th down every time, Madden style. Never punt. Don't kick field goals. Go for 2 every single time. That is horrifying to know that teams that are ranked 14th are getting amazing plays off of our special teams. Now you're playing the number 1 team in football. It's like, uh-oh, we're going to lose this game because the Cowboys returned 7 kicks for touchdowns. Like, my God. Like, my fingers are going to be crossed. My toes are going to be crossed every single time a punt or a kick takes place. Because Andrews Carlson's out there missing PATs. And it's just like, what else could go wrong? But thankfully, that's why you have a defense to step up. And you know me, if you've watched the show, I have been not pleased, but I have been okay. In a world of you give 2 thumbs up for excellent, I would give a 1 thumb up for the defense thus far this year. They've had their problems. Red zone defense wasn't great against Kansas City. 3rd down defense was pretty bad early in this year, but they've kind of turned that corner. It's not great. They got holes still. Talk about personnel hurting a unit. Devondre Campbell, just, my God, why do you play football? At this point in time in your career, I'm sure you're a great guy, but his whole, my God, it is like a black hole of ass out there playing linebacker number 2 for this team. But that brings me to my first point against the Cowboys offense, that being Dak Prescott. The newly minted paid quarterback loves to target the middle of the field, 9.6 yards per attempt. It's pretty good. Pretty good. I think, Dak Prescott, it's hard to read, okay? Dak Prescott is 6.6 yards per attempt. That ranks 27th in football. The Niners give up 9.6 yards an attempt over the middle of the field. Devondre Campbell, you are going to be targeted like there has never been in your life. This is going to be your day of reckoning, brother. You're going to see Jake Ferguson and CeeDee Lamb and Jalen Tolbert and Rico Dowdle just screen pass, check down, 10-yard flat, 10-yard curl, just right in front of your face. The L routes, whatever else you want to put out there. It is going to be, hey, who do you want to target on this play, Dak? Oh, Devondre Campbell. He is going to eat him for breakfast, lunch, dinner, maybe even dessert. If you're a Lord of the Rings fan, second breakfast is involved in there somewhere. It is going to be an absolute nightmare, which is why, if you're San Francisco. Now, I didn't mention Fred Warner because Fred is obviously great, and teams are not going to target Fred Warner when you can just target Devondre Campbell. Fred will do his job. Fred's great. I have no problem with Fred. He's just the best linebacker in football by a country mile. Just great. So Fred's excellence goes without mentioning, but Devondre Campbell's terrible play is needed to be mentioned because it's a massive detriment to this team. That said, that is why San Francisco's defensive line is going to be a massive key in this game. I cannot wait to watch, and it's going to be great because I know a lot of you out there were like, man, San Francisco should have drafted Tyler Guyton from Oklahoma, which, look, I'm Boomer Sooner for life out here, but he's been terrible. Like, he's the Devondre Campbell of offensive linemen. He's been god-awful as a rookie. Now, maybe in 4 years, we're like, wow, look at Tyler Guyton, he looks great, but my God, he's been Colton McKivitz level of bad, if not worse, for the Dallas Cowboys. And that's pretty bad. I cannot wait to watch Nick Bosa lick his lips, get in that stance, whatever he wants to call it, and just run right through, past, around, whatever else you want to put in there, Tyler Guyton. He is going to eat up Tyler Guyton. It's going to be awesome to see. I think the Dallas Cowboys offensive line is like the second worst in football at like sack percentage. They give up nearly 3 sacks a game. Like, this is a time for San Francisco's edge rushing core to come alive. Their pass rushers, Malik Collins, Kevin Givens, the newly elevated Evan Anderson, get your booty home, brother. Get to Dak Prescott, get to that quarterback. They are going to be one of the most important pieces at changing the game. I would expect a lot of screen passes, end arounds to CeeDee Lamb. They want to get him involved. Unfortunately, San Francisco's defense has also missed a lot of tackles this year. And San Francisco, because of Devondre Campbell, isn't really that fast. At linebacker number 2, I'm hoping we see D. Winters in this game like we saw against the Chiefs, but Nick Sorensen's kind of a wild card. You never know what you're going to get from Nicky Sorensen at times. But I do think that San Francisco, if Bosa can get home as an edge rusher, Leonard Floyd and those guys can get home, it's going to change the game for sure. I think that is the easiest way. One, obviously, is controlling trenches, but run the football offensively. It opens up play action and the red zone stuff for sure, but getting home to Dak takes away the end arounds, the screens. It limits how much he can target the middle of the field. And it also helps that the Dallas Cowboys will make themselves one-dimensional. They are, and I mean this sincerely, the worst rushing offense in the entire NFL. They're averaging under 78 yards per game on the ground, where teams are running the football more and more and more. You've seen the Bills and the Bengals and the Texans and the Chiefs kind of tweak the offense to, yeah, we have this great quarterback, sure, but we're going to run the football. If we can run the football, it opens up so much for our offense. The Cowboys said, we're going to bring back Zeke Elliott and hope he looks like 2016 Zeke again. He looks like he should be in the granny house out there being like, did you give me my warm cup of milk before bed? Zeke looks old. He looks tired. Rico Dowdle is fine, but it's Rico Dowdle. He's most teams' change of pace back. He's not going to give you much. Again, they are going to make themselves one-dimensional. And I think if you can get to Dak Prescott, bring him down, you're going to force, third and long, second and long. It's going to take away the middle of the field because he's going to have to pass the football down the sidelines, up the seams, which San Francisco's secondary has been pretty good this year. Whether it's Lenore has been otherworldly, Renardo Green has been awesome since being a starter, and against Kansas City, Charvarius Ward wasn't too bad. He wasn't great, but he wasn't too bad. Probably one of his best games so far this year. But I have a lot of trust in San Francisco's secondary to make plays to keep the offense alive. And look, if the last 3 or so weeks are anything to lean on, San Francisco's defense will do their job for 3.5 quarters. It's up to San Francisco's offense to score within that 3.5 quarters, because once that late fourth quarter session begins, San Francisco's defense gets tired, the run defense kind of starts to lack a little bit, the opposing team starts to move the football, and you're like, uh-oh, things are getting close. If I'm San Francisco, my goal was to make this game 28-7 in the fourth quarter. Make the opponent score 3 times against you and have to tie the game. I don't want to get into, well, if they score a 2-point conversion here, and if we go for 2, it's 4th and 1 on the goal line. Like, eliminate all of that stuff. Take care of business. San Francisco, on paper, which means nothing at all this year. On paper, San Francisco should be able to get back to who they were in the past. Whether it is to Debo as a playmaker, Cowing. Like, I think this game, if you were to do some predictions, which I usually don't do outside of the score, I think we're going to see Debo touch the ball 8+ times. I think Mason has over 110 yards on the ground. I think Cowing has 4 catches for like 75 yards. And I can see Pearsall being like a 3-catch guy and like 1 touchdown. And then, of course, Kittle in the red zone. If I were to get ballsy, 2 touchdowns for Mason, 1 for Pearsall, 1 for Kittle. That sounds about right to me. You're probably going to win like 31-23, 31-20. Like, San Francisco really should win this game. I'm not too worried about the Dallas Cowboys off the bye week because they have so many guys that are out. Like, that's the difference. The Chiefs had really nobody hurt. Yeah, Brown and Rashee Rice for sure, but it's like you have Juju, you have Kelsey, and you have Mahomes and Pacheco, but like, you're not getting those guys back, right? You knew who they were and weren't going to have when you walked into Sunday off their bye week. Whereas the Cowboys, they're not going to have Lawrence and likely Parsons and Williams and Cooks. Like, they're not going to have a lot of their massive core to help make them successful. So my money would be on a relatively good game from San Francisco's offense, and I really do think that they can get back on track in this one, or at least get on track enough to get them bridging that gap to getting Christian McCaffrey to return. And if that happens and is fully healthy and like there's no problem at all, then we're like, okay, San Francisco might be back playing Baker in Florida. Bosa hates Baker. Baker haunting him on the Spooky Mama season, if you will, this month. I really do think that San Francisco is going to win this game. I think they should win this game. In fact, they can't lose this game because you got people like Rams own SC out here that are freaking in 3rd place now because San Francisco can't take care of business. You got people saying Brocktober's not gone as planned, like Laurie Matthews says. I'm sorry, Brocktober has sucked thus far. Let's change that tune. Let's win this game, get into Halloween, watch the horror movies, eat the candy, have a great bye week, and like Laurie Matthews asks here, do you think the San Francisco 49ers make a deadline move? I have gone back and forth on this, Laurie, and I think that the San Francisco 49ers, I do not think need to acquire a wide receiver. I have heard many people saying Deontay Johnson, and I talked about Kendrick Bourne and others. Adam Thielen has been a name that I've heard out there. Now, is that true? Time will tell, but I've heard that for sure. They've talked about him inside San Francisco's front office, but I don't know what's going to happen there. I would not trade for a receiver. Maybe you go for like a low risk, low reward kind of guy, bring in a vet for a day. I think they worked out Russell Gage, who I think tore his ACL or like broke his foot last year for the Buccaneers, or maybe that was 2 years ago. He's a vet, but he's not going to give you much. Or it's Trent Taylor season, baby, and we're all just psyching ourselves out. But I don't think they'll trade for a receiver. But I do think that, funny enough, I think San Francisco might be wise to, had their record been different, say they were 5-2, say they were 4-3, I think that it'd be a different mindset. I think at that point they're buying a star, a premier player like Calais Campbell. Maybe it is a Deontay Johnson. Maybe they're calling for Denzel Ward in Cleveland. Maybe they're asking, for, some star edge rusher, Arden Key, or they're calling the Browns about Myles Garrett. Those insane things. You're like, wow, okay. But the way the season has played out thus far, I think it might. I'm leaning towards San Francisco trading for a very Charles Omenihu deal where they have him for 2 or 3 years. He's pretty cheap. The team he's currently on isn't maximizing him very well. This doesn't fall into this category, so I don't know why I'm bringing it up. Azeez Ojulari from the Giants is 25 years old. Last year of his contract, young player. The Giants really haven't utilized him right. Had a great rookie season, but kind of fell off ever since. I can see them wanting to bring him in and then extending him or putting a tender on him during the offseason to kind of, make him come back during 2025. I can see that happening for sure, but I have a hard time. People are like, go out and get Cooper Kupp. You're not getting Cooper Kupp from the Rams. I'm sorry. Especially now, they have a better record than you technically. So it's not going to happen, but I do think San Francisco makes a move, but I also I would not be shocked if they lose this game, that move is actually trading away a piece or two. I would really, really not be shocked. But I think John Lynch will be active. To what extent, I don't know. If they lose, I think it's maybe you sell a piece or two and you buy a piece or two, just moving money around and saving a penny here or there. But again, time will tell. But I think that comes down to what happens this Sunday. The San Francisco 49ers simply cannot lose this game. You cannot be 3-5 going into the bye week. You have to be 4-4, stay afloat. If you're lucky, fingers crossed, you are in first place by a thread, but first place, that's all that matters, right? So you have to win this game. I think they're going to win this game. I think San Francisco wins this game. I'll say 31-23. 8-point game. Dallas scores late, makes it relatively what's going to happen. But San Francisco running the ball effectively wins this game, puts it out of reach, goes into the bye week 4-4. And I say that with the biggest worry in the back of my mind, they can win, but they can also lose this one. So they have to win. It's desperation time. Play like you're in the playoffs, like your season's on the line, because it really is. It really, really is. It's not getting any easier. It's only going to get harder, even once or if CMC comes back. There is no promises for wins. The Rams are healthy again. The Bills are waiting for you. The Packers are waiting for you. The Seattle's waiting for you. The Cardinals waiting for you. The Lions waiting for you. The Buccaneers waiting for you. It's not going to get any easier anytime soon. You got to win this Sunday, primetime, cap off Week 8 with a win. Go into your bye week, rest up, get healthy against the Bucs. Maybe you get CMC and Feliciano and Jennings back, and you're like, hey, this feels more like 2022, 2023 once again, but that starts by winning this Sunday against the Dallas Cowboys. Want to thank Lori Matthews, who has all 3 in fantasy, so that works for her. Just lost Godwin, so may give Ricky a try. I'm not going to lie to you. I picked up Ricky before Aiyuk got hurt, and I'm feeling pretty good right now. I hate that, but I'm feeling pretty good right now. Want to thank Lori Matthews. Want to thank Rams Own SC. Papa J, a Niners throwback. Thank you all so much for commenting in the YouTube chat. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your Thursday night leading into your Friday morning. Enjoy the weekend. Football is abound. It's here week 8 The NFL season is finally here, and I can't wait to watch the game this Sunday, begging, hoping, praying for a Niners win to help me with my sanity and hopefully keep my mental health in check. But I want to ask you one more time to like, share, and subscribe. You can follow us on social media at 49ers_access is the X or the Twitter, 49ers.access is the Instagram. And if you want to go to any NFL game this season, use our promo code 49ersaccess, 49 ERS ACC ESS at SeatGeek.com to save yourself $20 off your first purchase. And if you're waiting for that injury report coming out, is Mason going to play? Is Debo going to play? Is Jauan Jennings going to play? Is Micah Parsons going to play? Don't go to Twitter. Don't go to ESPN or Fox Sports. Go to sportspider.com to organize all your favorite teams' news, podcasts, articles in one place for you. Again, based by team. Cowboy fans, Niner fans, does not matter. Find your sporting news at sportspider.com. It's the best place. It's your one-stop shop for all your favorite teams' news, podcasts, and articles. All right, that does it for me. Thank you so much again. My name is Sterling Bennett, and as always, until next time, I want to ask you that you just stay faithful, because you got to. You got to be 4-4 this Sunday. So as always, my name is Sterling Bennett, and stay faithful.